The court of public opinion has made their decision, and they do not like these guys. Which 8 players seem to be falling down draft boards? Why are they? And should we still buy into them? Headliner Nation, I have 8 players that are just plummeting down draft boards right now. And we need to figure out why that is. Should they really be falling that far? And when it comes time for your draft, should you let them fall? And if you find that you're still preparing for your draft, it is not too late to get our draft guide. And if you want to get one right now for only $10 and be added into the running for our largest giveaway ever, here's how. All you got to do is create an account over on Underdog. Make sure that you do that and deposit at least $10 with our code Headliners. Once you do that, Underdog is going to match your deposit up to $100, and you're going to get our draft guide for absolutely free. And then you'll also be entered into our drawing for a free $500 entry fee into the Bulldog 2 tournament, with a first place prize of $100,000. On top of that, you and I are gonna work together to formulate a draft strategy. We're gonna draft this team together, and we're splitting any of the winnings right down the middle, 50-50. So make sure you sign up and deposit over on Underdog at least $10 with code word Headliners. Now, it doesn't matter if you're playing best ball, redraft, superflex, 2QB, 1QB, 3 wide receivers, 2 tight ends. All of these players are falling down draft boards right now, everywhere. And first up is Jonathan Taylor, who surprisingly is actually still the RB8, but he has fallen several spots over the last couple of weeks. The biggest issue is that he decided to stay away from training camp when him and Jim Irsay didn't see eye to eye on his contract situation or how running backs were being treated at the NFL level. And since then, he requested a trade, but Jim Irsay said they were not going to trade him. So Jonathan Taylor decided this week he was going to show up to training camp. But shortly after getting there, he left again to tend to a personal matter. So the lack of work with Anthony Richardson at this point is becoming concerning. These two guys really need to be on the same page, because if they are, there is tons of upside potential for them. Imagine having 2 guys in the backfield of your offense that are the best runners at their position. And yes, Anthony Richardson hasn't taken an NFL snap in the regular season yet, but very quickly he could become one of the best quarterbacks at carrying the football that we have ever seen. Now, here is where things get tricky, because he's going to continue to slide until this situation resolves itself. So do you try to buy the dip as he continues to slide, hoping you get a massive discount if he plays week 1 in the entire season? Or do you continue to skip him, worried that maybe he does get traded, or maybe he just doesn't play in games this year? As of right now, it is still unclear to me as well. I am not giving up full hope on Jonathan Taylor, because I believe if he plays 17 games with the Colts this season, he is a top 5 running back. So I'm willing to sell the fade right now, but only down to RB13. If he starts falling to RB13 or further back, we're absolutely taking Jonathan Taylor, and we'll just freaking risk it. The signing of Zeke Elliott last week got all the Ramondre Stevenson truthers in a tizzy, except for your boy, because I'm still confident in him. And currently right now, he is still the RB10. I do expect him to continue to fall just a little bit, but I don't think it's going to be much. And that's probably for a good reason, because Stevenson is still going to eat in this offense. And even though people are freaking out over Ezekiel Elliott signing with the Patriots, this actually could be a good thing, because I think it helps us figure out what Ramondre Stevenson's role is actually going to be now. He was such a dynamic pass catcher last year. I don't think the Patriots wanted to take that type of work away from him, because he's the best pass catcher they have in the backfield. And if you wanted him to keep that role but also pick up carries on the ground, that was going to be a whole lot of work that the Patriots may not have wanted to put on him. So you sign Ezekiel Elliott to help on the ground instead, especially in those short-hearted situations and at the goal line. So maybe that should just be clarifying to us that the Patriots love Stevenson in the passing game, and some of that work that we saw last year isn't going to just disappear. And quite honestly, that work is what made him such a high upside player last season. So give me that, even if it means missing out on a few touchdowns on the ground. And speaking of that, Ramondre Stevenson only had 5 rushing touchdowns last year. he could still lose a few rushing touchdowns to Zeke Elliott and improve on that number in 2023. There's still going to be plenty of volume to go around, especially to Stevenson in the passing game. They don't really have any wide receivers right now that are alpha type players that Mac Jones, who is currently the starter, can rely on, except for the guy that helped him out of the backfield more than anyone last year, Ramondre Stevenson. So you know what? I'm still buying him as the running back 10, and I'll even buy him up to running back 8. I still think there is plenty of opportunity for him to be a low-end RB1 this season. And also, just as a note, Ramondre Stevenson was a far more dynamic runner last year than what Zeke Elliott was. The only thing Zeke Elliott was good at last year was short yardage situations at the goal line or when the Cowboys needed a few yards for a first down. So even though he's going to get those type of touches, Stevenson is still going to have the ability to really score from anywhere on the field. Kenneth Walker has slipped all the way down to RB17, and we are seeing some fabulous value being set up here. Yes, the growing injury is still lingering just a little bit, but Pete Carroll has said that he is going to be ready for week 1, and quite honestly, I don't want Kenneth Walker getting beat up in the preseason anyway. Let the guy sit. Week 1 is when it matters. And everyone is worried about Zach Charbonnet, and I still understand that, and I feel like I'm beating a dead horse here, but Zach Charbonnet, while still being a good running back, doesn't necessarily mean he's just taking Kenneth Walker's job. And I don't care that he has round 2 draft capital right now, because the Seattle Seahawks had to take him in round 2 because they didn't pick until way later in round 4. So even if they said, hey, this is actually probably a 3rd round guy, but he's not going to be around for us, let's go ahead and take him now because we want someone solid to back up Kenneth Walker. We want a 2-headed monster in the backfield. And Kenneth Walker could still see 60% of the RB snaps this season. And if he does that with his big playability, he is going to be more than capable of coming in as a low-end RB1 or maybe even a high-end RB2 at worst. So you know what? Buy the fade all the way up to RB13. Some of you are going to be a little too risk adverse, so you won't go any higher than that. But you know what? If you get outside those top 12 running backs, Kenneth Walker should be on your radar and on your team. Mike Evans has fallen all the way to wide receiver 34, and that's crazy to think for a guy that has set an NFL record for the most consecutive seasons to have at least 1,000 receiving yards to start your career. This dude has never had less than 1,000. But now we enter a new team with a quarterback uncertainty that we haven't seen in quite some time from Mike Evans. And even in 2022, this Tampa Bay offense struggled at times, even with Tom Brady at the helm. So who's going to end up winning the quarterback position, Baker Mayfield or Kyle Trask? And as of right now, it does appear to be Baker Mayfield. But is Mayfield a guy that can complete enough passes and be good enough to get the ball to both Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, making them both fantasy viable? Not only that, but Mike Evans has really thrived in the past on deep plays. Those deep balls where he has been able to go up and beat one-on-one coverage hasn't made his career, but has made his career a whole lot better. And unfortunately, I don't think a whole lot of defenses are going to be worried about the deep ball with Baker Mayfield or Kyle Trask. So is that going to make this offense a little bit more one-dimensional? And if it does it bring down the ceiling on Mike Evans quite a bit? Unfortunately for Mike Evans, I am willing to sell the fade, but right now he's pretty appropriately drafted. So even though he's wide receiver 34, I'm only selling the fade down to wide receiver 36. Would I draft him much higher than this? No, but I'm also not going to let him fall very many spots because right now you could draft him as like your wide receiver 3, and I think that's okay. Will we see a bounce back performance from Keenan Allen, who's currently going as the wide receiver 19? Now, even though there's a lot of question marks around the Los Angeles Chargers right now, they're good question marks. So what type of offensive changes are we going to see? Obviously, we hope that Justin Herbert grows after a little bit of a down performance than what we expected last year. But they've added Kellen Moore as the offensive coordinator, and they brought in Quentin Johnston through the draft. So they've had a little bit of a shakeup on offense, and that could be good, or it could hurt them a little bit. But not only that, you still have Austin Eckler, who is one of the best receiving backs in all of football, and you have Mike Williams, who, as long as he stays stays healthy, he's one of the better deep threats in all of football. And I think a lot of people are concerned over Keenan Allen's health because he missed some time last year. But I think we need to key on the fact that when he came back and he was fully healthy, he was one of the best wide receivers in all of football. This was a guy that was locked in as a top 10 wide receiver once he got healthy. And I think he could absolutely dominate out of the slot. When you have such big playmakers on the outside like Johnston and Mike Williams, that's going to make things in the slot a whole lot easier, especially when linebackers also need to keep an eye on Austin Eckler. Keenan Allen could just thrive over the middle of the field this year. But here's the thing. I'm willing to actually sell the fade just a little bit here because I think Keenan Allen is a much better wide receiver 2 for you than wide receiver 1. In years past, he's had the upside and the amount of volume to potentially be a wide receiver 1. But now that they have some added weapons and we're looking at a little bit of a different offense now, it does bring to light some potential concerns for that. So you know what? If he falls all the way to wide receiver 24, that's okay. I'm willing to sell him down to that point because you're still going to get a good value for him as a wide receiver 2. I just don't like him as your wide receiver 1 this year. Michael Pittman going at wide receiver 38 is probably one of the most ridiculous things I have seen all offseason. Yes, you have some concerns about a rookie quarterback in Anthony Richardson that is still going to have some issues with accuracy this year, even though I think those are being blown out of proportion a little bit. And he's coming off a very disappointing 2022. But quite honestly, there could be huge bounce back potential here for Michael Pittman. He's going to be the wide receiver 1 in this offense. Not close. Now, if the Colts are going to be missing Jonathan Taylor, I can understand why the upside would be a concern for you with Michael Pittman. But a guy that you can draft not only as your wide receiver 3, but potentially wide receiver 4 is going to be a guy that you could absolutely play, especially like in PPR leagues this year. Because even though the upside might not be as high as we would like, he's going to get the most targets on this team and it's not close. And Michael Pittman can be a mismatch nightmare, whether it be on the outside or over the middle of the field. He wins one-on-one coverage. And if you have a guy like Alec Pierce on the other side that can stretch the field, and if this run game does what I hope it does, fingers crossed Jonathan Taylor does play this whole season, then at that point, you're going to have a lot of wide open middle of the field because people are going to have to be paying attention to Anthony Richardson and Jonathan Taylor. So you know what? Buy the fade. And honestly, we can buy the fade all the way up to wide receiver 24. I'm okay with Michael Pittman as a wide receiver 2 on my team this season. What about my boy Chiggy Oko from Tennessee? He was one of our big breakout candidates this year. But DeAndre Hopkins signing may have messed with that a little bit. Now, Chiggy Oko is currently going as the tight end 16. He's seen a little bit of a free fall, but not a big one at this point. Some people were looking at him right outside that tight end 1 range for a while. But even though his value has fallen a little bit since the DeAndre Hopkins signing, it's interesting to note that Treylon Burks, who just recently went down with a sprained LCL, is a guy that isn't exactly an example of health dating back to his college days. And I think we still need to question how heavy of a run offense is this going to be. Obviously, you have Derrick Henry, but they added Tajay Spears in the draft as well. Also a guy that could help him out in the run and pass game. My biggest concern with Chiggy Oko is that we get to a point where we have to rely on the touchdowns. Chiggy Oko, to me, isn't one of like your normal tight ends that you think about as being like a mismatch nightmare in the end zone. He's not like a guy that I think you just throw the ball up to and gets open and grabs it. Chiggy Oko, to me, is a guy that I think works well in open space. So I would actually like to see more volume for him. But as of now, with Treylon Burks beat up again, I'm willing to buy the dip and go up to tight end 14 with him. But quite honestly, I think Chiggy Oko is a guy that continues to fall, and maybe you can draft as like a tight end 2 on your team if you go with a tight end a little bit earlier. Worst case scenario, you have a good backup or you have a trade piece for later on. Worst case scenario, you dump him to waivers. Aaron Rodgers has slipped down to quarterback 16. At one point, he was even being looked at like quarterback 13. quarterback 14. And I thought really after week 1 of Hard Knocks, he was going to go up. And his ADP didn't. Now, I think we all know the main concerns with Aaron Rodgers this season, right? New offense. And yes, Nathaniel Hackett being there is going to institute a lot of the same things that Aaron Rodgers is used to playing in. But it's still a new team, a new offense. And he's got new offensive weapons and new teammates that he's going to have to create a chemistry with that he hasn't necessarily had in the past, outside of Randall Cobb and Lazard. So they're going to need time to mesh, but having time to mesh is going to depend on the offensive line. And if they continue to struggle, that's not good for Aaron Rodgers, because part of finding time to mesh includes having time to throw the football. And Aaron Rodgers may not have a ton of that this season. If that happens, that is going to make things a little bit more difficult, and much more difficult than what it needs to be. But you know what? I'm willing to buy the fade up to quarterback 12 right now, because he does have the potential upside to be a top 12 quarterback. Quarterback 16 to me seems quite a bit low, and I am absolutely still surprised people are not drafting him sooner. But Headliner Nation, there is a breakdown on several guys who are seeing a slip in their ADP right now. And the ADP I use for these guys is all redraft base, but I still think this is really good information regardless of what type of format you're playing in. So Headliner Nation, do not forget our awesome giveaway and your chance to get our draft guide for free just by downloading the Underdog app, signing up for a new account, and making a first-time deposit of $10 with our code word Headliners. But more importantly, before you get out of here, hit the like button for me, subscribe to the channel if you are new here, because you're not going to want to miss anything we do, and leave me some comments down below and let me know which one of these guys, if they're falling ADP, you're more than willing to buy right now. Headliner Nation, I am going to get out of here. Peace out. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll catch y'all on the next episode of the Fantasy Headliners.